Yeah, welcome to another edition of the M365 FM podcast. Today, we are joined by Catherine Diamond Bessette, a Microsoft MVP, educator, community leader, and the technical storyteller at VM's office of the CTO. We are diving into one of the biggest modern place challenges with OneNote, Loop, Copilot notebooks, Teams, and more. Where should your information actually live, and how do we avoid digital chaos? So, Catherine, welcome to the show. For people who not may you know you, can you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your role at the job and how you work with the community?
Absolutely. That's a lot of questions right there. So to start off with, I work for VM Software. I am in a role under the strategy side in the company. They call it a technologist, but I feel like no one knows what a technologist is. So I've given myself the title technical storyteller, and that seems to resonate and hit home a little better. As for community, I am in so many communities across the board because I feel like I just thrive there. I make connections. I love being around the people and then learning everything that comes from it. So yes, I am a Microsoft MVP. I sit in the M365 apps group. I also sit on the board for the Women in M365 group. I have a learning club there. I'll give a little plug. I just finished updating the website. I'm sure there'll be links after this. I'll give you my link tree that has on it for any women that want to join in the conversation. And we have an all inclusive group for anyone that wants to come help support the community that way. And I'm spacing on what was the last question you asked me?
Yeah, what the community, what your work look like in the community?
Sure. My work in the community is a lot in the way of presentations and then just kind of like supporting through sharing information. I like trying to get my company involved. So we run our own internal community program. So we really breathe the life of what it means to be an evangelist side of that community and get inside access to all the things that you can and can't talk about.
I think you wear a lot of hats: technical storyteller, educator, organization, MVP. Which of those roles most influence how you approach Microsoft 365 technologies today?
Well, I'm gonna throw you a curveball here. I don't think any of them completely define how I approach everything because my complete definition is making friends and connections.
Mhm.
So it's a community reach back. I started off at my current company and my previous, what I call my previous life, in support and operation roles. I didn't realize my most important skill there was gonna be translating between, like, that technical jargon and then being able to talk to grandma, trying to figure out how to pull the right cord on a device or working with point of sales general managers. And those skills, learning how to educate and translate what I'm saying and giving it out to a non-technical and technical person at the same time is how I kinda live my entire life.
Let's jump into the many places problem. So um, we have, or yeah, we have OneNote, Loop, uh, Teams chat, Copilot, Planner, I don't know, whiteboard, Outlook, and all. I can make notes. For me, it's a little bit overwhelming when you what, and is there any, I don't know, plan from Microsoft how to use it right?
So, plans for Microsoft and how to use it right. I don't know if we'll get that. I've been in the Microsoft community for some time, and they kinda give you the choice that you can find the right tool that fits your avenue, but then it ends up being like this entire data sprawl. So what I've been trying to do is figure out, okay, we do have OneNote, and I moved from having text documents on my desktop to consolidating them into a OneNote when I realized I could search across them. And that was my big evolution. But then I got introduced to Loop when it came out. Then I got introduced to these new, what we call the Copilot Pages. And then there's notebooks. And you just like your head starts to spin of, okay, what are the advantages and disadvantages of each of these because they're sure the place. Just like having I'm still a huge sway page user and I compare that to people that are like running websites internally with SharePoint. I say, "Hey, did you know there's Sway for this external collaboration factor where you can give that one side information out?" And then we kinda dive into it. So breaking apart Loop is one of my favorite tools, hands down, to use internally. I am a huge believer, but then the adoption of it kind of fails because people don't understand it. Maybe there's too many connections, and I will give it to people who were first adopters. It was not fantastic when it first came out, so we had some drop off there, but it's really kinda come back around, but then we come into limiting factors, like you can't share loops externally. So what do I use there? And that's kind of what we've been struggling back and forth with in these conversations. There is no one note to rule them all anymore, is what I'm trying to say.
But is there something like, I don't know, governance or guidance we or companies should set up for using it right? Or how can organization, yeah. I don't know. Or people also don't, I don't know, have I make there a note, how we can work better with all these options?
I think we can work better with all of these options by understanding what our goals are. Like, I'm going to use PowerPoint to give you something visual and share something externally, and that's a very clear line. If I'm gonna make a blog, I'm gonna be over inside a Word. But we get a little muddled because we've kind of created these collaborative note platforms, and the way that I've been able to segment them is I still think of OneNote majority
Mhm,
as my personal note-taking tool. It's my external, like, application that you might be working with could be Obsidian, but this is my internal. And where I really started to struggle with OneNote is where I call, notes go to die.
mhm.
Ideas go to die because there's nothing there that reminds me to go back to it. And that's where I've kind of graduated into having this hybrid scenario with Loop. So I will create a Loop module, like a little component that is linked to a task list that will then go to my planner. And I know we're going in a big circle here. And I can copy and paste that same component and put it into 10 different pages inside a OneNote so I can have a takeaway section. So I make all of my notes in columns and make them look pretty, and then I'm able to do a takeaway. When we start to look at a collaborative front, though, I help run some internal groups for technology at my company. I will then make loop pages
Mhm.
for the different learning that we're doing, so then I can copy and paste that into an email. I have it pinned to the top of a group in a team that we work with, and I'm able to have, like, a one source of truth. I think Loop is a great place for a one source of truth.
Okay. Do you see Loop replacing traditional meeting notes in Teams?
I mean, technically, it already kind of has, we just haven't realized it's happened. So, Loop is, of course, sort of kind of backend by SharePoint in some senses of the word, but it also whenever you create meeting notes and you create items inside of a reoccurring meeting, it goes to a loop now. We just don't even realize that we're using it, and that was a beautiful consumption model because we used to have this notes inside of our meetings that kinda just went to what I call the ether, like, they just disappeared, and you're like, "I can't find the chat anymore, and I don't even know what Jim said that I need to do in this project." But Loop, whenever you have a meeting and you create meeting notes, it'll automatically create a page. And if you use the task section inside of there, it'll create this mini little planner where you can at message people, say that you've complete task, and then if you aren't wanting to work inside of that planner, I like moving my task from that planner that gets generated into my personal one so I can keep track of everything at a centralized location. So it's kinda like sprawling and bringing back in and sprawling and bringing back in, and then just try to find the right solution that works.
the loop becomes the new, I don't know, I think it's either engaged Yammer or the new, is it or the new SharePoint? What did you think?
Well, I think I was in a session here recently where someone said Yammer is not dead, but it's not what we want it to be. Like, I loved, don't get me wrong, the idea of Yammer and having these collaborative zones. I think people are just so burnt out on notifications, and then we get overwhelmed and we just don't even have time for our real job. One of my favorite statistics when it comes to focus, it takes you 23 minutes after you've been disrupted from your task to become as efficient back into your task as you were before you got interrupted. That's saying you get interrupted twice in a day, you have lost an hour of time essentially getting productivity, and that's where I kinda fell short with Yammer. Now, Loop is a little less invasive. I like it because I can update one place and everything across the board that people view are going to be the same item. And email is notorious for this. So when you are inside of an email and you have 15 updates on a chain, you have a document over here in 3 PDFs that were attached to 4 other emails, and you're not sure what the most current information is, Loop was great because I could go to that same email no matter what the information was, it's always been updated on that back end, and you can do things like voting tables, and it kind of bridges the gap, I think, between the legacy, I live in email and the new age, I live in Teams, how he prioritizes that. It's definitely Loop had his place, and I think that we've kind of graduated to the Copilot Pages, and it's gonna be a lot coming together because we keep feeling like Microsoft makes these applications, and they give us tools to bring everything together, and this is where we're coming back around with the Copilot Pages again. So, with these pages and notebooks, you're able to, and not OneNote, notebooks, just to help clarify that, you can add in all of these content sources into a single location and then have it sort of ground a Copilot response. So it's almost like an ad hoc agent in the loosest sense that we're grounding the information and then able to ask questions from that. And I'll give you the use case that I most recently used it for. So my company throws a big event during the year for partners and analysts and everyone external to come talk to us about some things. Well, they give us all these roles. They'll have a bunch of know before you go calls. And I honestly got lost. Like, I got added last minute to certain things. I was able to go into this page. I could add all of the calls that I was a know before you go calls, all the planning calls, all of the emails that were associated by saying, "Hey, look for emails that are associated with this," and I was able to click through. Then I added in any of my group messages and loop components that were associated with this into one area. I then asked it to create me a summary. Then it came up with a one-page summary. And on the right-hand side, I asked it, "Hey, what do I need to know for my specific role during this event for next week?" And it gave me a complete list of where the information came from, what the most recent was, and anyone that I needed to go talk to for clarification on something that wasn't quite clear. That would have taken me hours. And this was maybe 20 minutes pulling in the right resources.
I think when we have all these places where we can store information, I think we have overall a search, but did Copilot, in your perspective, become the new overall search for information?
So I think it already is. I don't know about you, but I can't find a file in my OneDrive to save my life, but if I ask Copilot to do it, somehow it knows, and it gets really specific. So, it was probably about 6 months ago. I was inside of the platform trying to find a PowerPoint from a presentation that I had done, like, 7 months prior. I could not find it. I couldn't remember the name, I couldn't remember the session title, and they were asking it so that they could redo it somewhere else. I went to Copilot and asked it, "What presentation did I present on XYZ date?" And it pulled it up in, like, 10 seconds. It's incredible. There's never been a Windows search tool that has worked this well. But it does kind of open the broader scope up with just asking Copilot chat, and that's really where the Pages comes into a different avenue because I can ground it in a specific project and then maybe even invite people that are a part of that same project. And we could work in the same area. We can add in our resources associated here. And it's more of a collaboration rather than a single search for yourself.
Yeah. I think Copilot heavily depends on metadata for the search. Uh, how can we have, or how does it change from, I think from, yeah, from these, I don't know, I have not so the best structure. All on me is laying on my desktop, but, yeah, did we become, or did must we in the future more, safe with or working with metadata?
You mean like tagging it better ourselves?
Yeah, and writing, I don't know who has created this form when, I don't know, there's a lot of metadata I can add.
So that is something that I hear a lot, especially when it comes to artificial intelligence. And we have the concept of like rot data, which is redundant, obsolete, and trivial. It's another fun acronym to kind of throw out there. I'm going to run a campaign eventually to get rid of acronyms. It's going to be illegal to use them. But for now, this is a term that we use to say it's kind of muddying the waters of our AI. It's old versions of help documentation that has a higher pull because someone wrote it better 4 years ago than they wrote it now, but the now information is more correct. And how do we weight that? That's definitely a governance question.
How can we prevent from the, I don't know, sheet version 18, final XML stuff? What's your tip?
My tip is to practice good hygiene when it comes to documents, and I say that, and it's one of those I don't always practice what I preach. I completely admit it. I just went through my OneDrive the other day and found a PowerPoint from 2021 with mostly irrelevant information in it. It becomes something that we have to create maybe expiration dates on documents. My company's gotten a little better on our SharePoint Health, where if I have a document that's over 2 years old, I'm getting emails stating, "Hey, does this still need to live here? Should you update it? Does it need to be deleted?" And it kind of makes you think about maybe I shouldn't create as much content because then I gotta go update it all the time. But it's a good reminder to not just hoard. And after we kind of get people on the same page, I think AI is going to help a lot. Microsoft is releasing some things with Copilot to devalue documentation that has not been accessed or changed and modified in a period of time. They have some details that will be coming out on that, but they talked about this a little bit on stage because that's been a big topic. It's okay. I know that this answers my question, but is it still relevant?
Okay. Do you have say for, uh, at the start, Copilot notebooks? What exactly is Copilot notebooks, and where do it fit into the Microsoft ecosystem?
That's a great question. So, whenever we start gathering information, and we have this huge data sprawl because Jill decided she was gonna create individual meetings instead of reoccurring meetings, and then we got 5 or 6 management email chains about the same topic. Notebooks are where we can go and add everything together and reference multiple items so that when we need to go ask questions about what is the most relevant in this scenario, we're able to ground it. So basically, notebooks are just grounding. And then we create pages in these notebooks, which are essentially loop components because we can add in like a mermaid chart, we can add in an additional task planner, we can add in code and PowerPoints, embedded YouTube videos. All of these components can kind of sit inside of these pages, and then we can delegate out access. The one thing I like about the module aspect of loop is that you can have a loop inside of a loop inside of a loop, and you can own the top level loop and then create these internal components to then share out with the necessary teams for that task. Then it all again feeds back to the same place. And then you tap that loop component and you insert it inside of a notebook.
Mm.
And we've grounded multiple sources together. And I think everyone, when we first started out inside of like the new Microsoft ecosystem, we decided we were gonna make a million chats, and then they just kinda went on forever, and then we could never find the chats that had the information. This puts it into a place for us to write in a single area.
Mm. Have we to rethink in the age of AI, co-pilots and knowledge management?
One more time?
Um, if knowledge management change through Copilot AI, or can we is it stays the same? What did you think?
I think it absolutely changes the conversation. Not just because, we can ask it 100 questions and get answers, because we could do that with Google before,
Mm,
but we also have to have all of these documents. I've seen 100 things come out from different people that were completely wrong, and we are really living in the era of subject matter experts being key, and I think we sometimes forget that and think that a marketing person can write a technical documentation, but that's not true. I don't think it'll ever be true because there is no way to vet something without that human component, and I've seen some large MCP chains of checking each other's AI, and it still has an air of error, and that's human nature too. I don't
mm,
think we can make something perfect because we can't be perfect ourselves.
mm. I think we create a lot of content, Word docs, and so on. And there, yeah, I can work. I think, yeah, normally I can work with for the most tools with sensitivity levels and pure view. But I think by I am company and they have thousands of workers. I think the pure view team will kill me, or they can't handle this. Uh, how we can, yeah, I think have an overview and governance these multi-optional world of notes.
I think we need to reinvest in education, and I don't mean just, like, let's go buy an O'Reilly subscription. I mean our internal truth sayers. I have been through many companies and many iterations of, okay, we now have our Google this .com era. We have this AI era. We have computers getting faster and being able to give us anything that we want at the tip of our fingers, walking around with massive computers in our pocket. But I think we need to have someone in an enablement role to ground what we need to learn. to know and understand the aspects of the needs in the company to ground that information. Otherwise, we're just kind of going off the handle. I can spend an hour learning about Kubernetes, and then I can spend another hour learning about AWS services, and then spend 14 hours learning about the new things with Microsoft. But where did that get me?
Oh,
Nowhere. We gotta have someone to help us ground that, and that's where I think the enablement roles really play a huge part in the company. Then, if it's talking about compliance and governance, we definitely have to have some type of document owner department that keeps everyone honest. So I guess this is a lot of middle management that we're talking about there.
what did you think uh, could be, especially in this world, and state of AI readiness? How can we achieve this, and what will be AI readiness for you?
I feel like that's a trigger word right now. So AI readiness. I have this shirt that I absolutely love. And it is a flow and it goes from left to right, starting with a poop emoji, like the little poop emoji in your phone. It's got the Copilot symbol in the middle, and then it outputs a rainbow poop emoji. Because if you're putting junk in, you're gonna get junk out. It's just gonna look really pretty. And I think that comes back to a concept that we've seen over time. If you ever get up on stage and you're just captivated by someone talking because it seems really good and like the truth, you believe it. You're walking out of that room as a new person until it starts to settle in like, wait a second. That was that real? What did he just say? And I think AI is really good at that person up on stage making even the most wrecked topics sound like the truth. And I wanna think we're better at catching stuff like that, but then I also know that there's sites out there like The Onion and others that seem like satire to some people and truth to others, so that's kinda where I think that concept falls.
Yeah, also, what tips can you give companies, organizations they will fight against? I call it information sprawl. What tips can you give them?
How am I gonna fight against application sprawl? Well, I like to have a board or initiate a board, and you should have some type of stakeholders from a majority of your departments and make sure that your board is made up of not just technical people, but non-technical types so that they can give some sort of truth or maybe reground you being like, "Hey, you can't use this acronym because I don't know what this acronym even means and I work in this department." So, helping someone to get an outside view of new software coming down the line, any type of additions, and then I like to run with a wider audience, use cases.
Mhm.
So, we had this new thing called promptathons, and a promptathon is basically giving people access to Copilot, GPT, Anthropic, something and saying, "Hey, I want you guys to spend a week and come up with the best prompts that save the most amount of time in your department for your use cases and feed that back." We should really be doing this with any application that we want to adopt. We should be getting the user perspective, but so much of the time, I feel like it just ends up being a check in the mail or money in the mail saying, "Hey, this one costs less, so we're gonna go with this one," even though it doesn't fit our use case.
What did you think our organization, yeah, care enough about backup and retention for collaborative content like, I don't know, loop pages and Copilot generated material, all this?
So, you're asking maybe what
If there
someone
are,
should take for advice?
yeah, I think we have, we generate, AI generates so much content, I think, actually. We see it on LinkedIn. Uh, and have we rethink backup and retention uh, in organizations, or Can we work like we worked before?
Yeah. I think we live in an era of, like I considered coming into SharePoint and OneDrive being the explosion of data, but now we've, like, exponentially grown that, and we have to roll it back at some point. But I think we have a larger issue beyond retention right now. We'll have to think about retention in the future for sure, but we need to think about vetting the authenticity of that and the accuracy and whether or not it's still relevant. So again, the relevancy of it. Maybe having some kind of self-management to an extent. Like, if you have a document library or you have a thing, have a bare minimum of 2 years. I think anything older than 2 years, especially if you're in a technology space, needs to be addressed. If you're working in compliance almost every other hour, you need to make sure that the regulation hasn't changed. If you're in the medical field, some things may be static, and you do have a retention to keep things for a period of time based off of, like, HIPAA in the States or GDPR in Europe for those regulations. Understand your regulations and then understand your relevancy time frame, I think is the order of operations. I always go with compliance first because compliance costs you money if you're not within regulations, and then go to, "Okay, how do we clean this and make it right?"
I see you write and speak a lot of the topic workplace culture. Um, how do AI tools change the human side of collaboration? What did you think?
I think it changes the way that we communicate with each other, but I think it's also a fantastic learning tool. I was just in a presentation by someone a couple days ago, even. They were presenting on how to become a leader, and we were doing some internal mentorship, and they were talking about delegating. How do you delegate? And sometimes we feel kind of afraid that we're not giving someone enough information or we're not able to really delegate a task because we can't explain it. But I kind of looped it back to ground it with the rest of the people saying, hey, if you were able to get AI to do what you want, grounding it with the right information, you have the skills to be a leader. And leadership skills and having good prompting skills sort of go hand in hand when you start reading like the list side by side on the expectation setting, the audience setting, and the documentation background setting. It's the same thing. And I think that helps people kind of bridge the knowledge gap of how do we get there.
Did you think AI generated some summaries, notes, and so on can reduce? Yeah, I think it's yeah, reduce thinking or creativity or have there? Yeah, I don't know. If is there a change? Get that people a lot of people say through using through as was ChatGPT, but Copilot is really the same. We get stupid by using AI.
I don't think that's true, and I think I have 3 points here. The first point is I don't think AI is coming for anyone's job. I think the guy using AI is coming for your job, is the way I say it. As for creativity, I consider myself a highly creative person. And sometimes I use it to talk back and forth with to get ideas to spark me forward. It's impossible for me to pay someone to sit here all day long and talk back and forth to spark some generations because I will take like 5 or 6 responses from it, compile those together, and then go read something else to inspire my even title for some of my sessions or my blogs. Then it can help us kind of move a step beyond by getting concepts created. So we have mildly creative people out in the field that have these fantastic ideas for applications. They have ideas for maybe workflows and images and bringing like concepts together, but they didn't really have the words necessarily to express to someone that can actually make that item. So if you can get a concept and say, "Hey, I want it in this style with these images together, but I want to tweak it this way," and then you're able to give it to someone that has a graphic design degree and say, "Hey, can you make this happen for me?" That's going to come out closer to what you're imagining in your brain than externally. How I've been able to use it in a really incredible way was back in the earlier set days of ChatGPT. I went through this cycle of taking one of my longtime presentations that I'd been doing for 4 or 5 years. I imported it and asked it to make me an outline. I then tweaked the outline to add or remove things and reorder things to be a story, had it give me a draft. I took that draft and it was about cybersecurity, so it got really boring when I did it. So I put it back in after I finished writing this piece and asked the AI to change this as if I'm going to war with cybersecurity and ransomware. And it just took it to the next level of this content piece I created. Granted, I did have to, like, copy, edit, and roll it back because it went a little hard in this section, but it made that piece one of my most successful blog posts that year because I had someone to go back and forth with, and I think it's just gives us tools to be better.
Yeah. You're an MVP, and last month, I think it was the MVP summit in Redmond. So can you have Microsoft tell some trends in Microsoft 360 collaboration? I don't know, new tools or yeah, so something else we can you're allowed to tell us. I know something is forbidden, but or it's the trend.
Yeah, I think there is a trend, and I so one of the things I really like about being an MVP and getting to go to that summit is I am an M365 MVP, but I was able to go to the other groups, including GitHub's Copilot, which is coming down. And I got to experience and watch people on stage be able to vibe code. And I am in no way, shape, or form a developer. I can barely write a PowerShell like script so that I can do something. And this gave me the inspiration and the thought process of I could make a mock-up proof of concept to hand over to the appropriate team. And I think it really enables people to take their journeys to the next level of both understanding like, you can go beyond your limitations, and then being able to express and kind of, like, automate some of your daily task, and that's really, I think, what the Frontier project brought in was your daily task stuff.
What will you do when Microsoft? I think Microsoft came and say, "Hey, can you please build us a solution for the notes problem?" They give you all the money you need and all the resources. What product will you or what service will you build?
Hmm, if I had all the money in the world, I would make OneNote work right. So, I'm a huge component of go where the people already are, and I'm not sure Microsoft gets that right. Because they continue to build new applications, new platforms, they change the interfaces, and I know it's not quite possible, and again, money's probably a factor, but if you're giving me a blank check, I would go where we're already putting information and merge it together to be more collaborative, and I think they're sort of doing this, but they're not using, like, OneNote as a base. They are doing what's called cowork. And this is something that's either public preview or GA now. Parts of it are GA, but what Cowork does is once you click on it, it's a lot like the Copilot chat that you're used to working with. But when you start a prompt, it'll start automatically tailoring and looking for the appropriate agents to use for your prompt based off of what you're trying to do. This will also use, say, like your internal agents and the frontier PowerPoint. So if I went into Cowork today, it has an automatic, like, "Here, try this button out," and one of them is clean up my mailbox. What it'll do is it'll go through your entire mailbox in your inbox and say, "Hey, you have 15 emails with this subject and this thing. How do you wanna handle this? You need to follow up on these items. Do you wanna do this now? Do you want us to make you a to-do list task to do this?" And then it kinda goes through a few more steps, but Cowork, I think, is the closest to what I envisioned Copilot always being.
Awesome. When you are working heavily in I think, yeah, in community work, how what keeps you motivated to continue investing so much time and effort in community building?
I would say I didn't know I would be here now. I started off at my company, like I said, in the support organization, and if you've ever worked support, you're a very isolated community. You have your own community, you have your own village in support, and you guys like understand where you are in the trenches. But when I started this role, I got introduced of what the true sense of having technical community is. And I will say there are no better friends. Like I joke that I have more friends on the road than I have at home now because I just go to all of these conferences. I don't eat alone at these conferences unless I want to. Like I have to fight to eat alone because it's just being a part of something and being a part of something bigger helps you be involved and helps you be motivated. It gives me I see all of these other people do incredible things, and it makes me wanna do more incredible things, and just in a competitive way, but in a I wanna be there with you on stage way.
Have you're a big loop fan and or it's or feel free any other tool, but is there one tip that you can give that the most people don't know what they can do. I last I learned I can in Word I can double click the brush and this was for me life changing. Have you some tips that people yeah not aware of, especially
Inside
with
a loop?
inside of Leap or any tool where you say this is amazing productivity hack or so.
Oh boy, where am I now? I like I've spent a lot of time in the notebooks recently because I can pull together everything that I'm working on and all of the 100 projects that I'm a part of, and both internally and externally from my company. I work in strategy. It basically says I do everything. So being able to have something keep current and know what the last thing that I had talked about with XYZ person, these pages have helped me do that. I do a mentor inside of my company, and I made a page in a notebook just for this mentor, and I did an intake with them asking what your goals are, where you are in your career, when's the last time you've done X, Y, and Z, what have you tried, and what do you hope to gain? And it helped me come up with action plans, which not just helped me, but felt good by helping someone else.
Yeah. So my final question is Microsoft has, I think it's like a running gag, rename all their products every feeling every month. But for listeners there who feel overwhelmed by the pace of Microsoft innovation, what advice will you give them?
that it is a lot, that you're not alone, that every time you turn on your even just office.com, the interface seems to look different, but provide feedback because they do listen. I have the pleasure and honor of being in MVP, so they showed us some of the new interfaces that are coming in to the platform before they release, like getting rid of the applications button. You would not imagine the uproar that we made in that room when they showed us that, like, you are not removing that and making it 6 more clicks for our and people to know where to get what they need. And I feedback.microsoft.com, complain, and not in a bad way, just tell them that this makes your life harder because I'm sure there's, like, 7 other people that have the same problem, and if they get enough feedback on a post, they take it under consideration and bring it to their PM board to say if they're gonna make a change. So they do make changes based off of user feedback. Speak up.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a cool tip. It's more I often have the feeling some companies might give feedback, but no one read this. But this is awesome. So yeah, then I will say thank you so much for staying here and give an overview of all these cool tools and how do you work with it. Yeah, I say thank you and wish you a good day. Bye.
They